Eddie looked over her intricately, as if he were a top-notch investigator absorbing the evidence of a crime scene. He sighed through his nose and buried his eyes in the back of his hands, which had been propping his chin. "Eddie, I can explain." "Don't, Quo," he rasped. He pushed himself out of his chair and walked up to her with a somber stride. She looked away from him, expecting to be ridiculed and reprimanded for her dishonesty. He took her gently by the hand and said, "You need to lie down. He banged you up pretty good." Then he ushered her over to the couch. His quiet tone and kindness ate away at her. "It's not what it looks like. He didn't mean to—" "Stop," he cut her off. "I'm going to get you something for your head." As he moved toward the bathroom behind her, his steps carried an extra weight to them. The light flicked on, cabinets squeaked, water poured from the faucet. When he came back, he had a damp washcloth in his hand. He handed it to her. "Clean up your face. Press into the wound. I'll warm it up for you when it gets cold." She stared at him in disbelief, wondering how he could act so rationally when she knew from his posture that he was steaming on the inside. Patting her face with the cloth, she felt more like a teenager in the presence of her stern father after being caught with a boy he did not approve of. As he plopped down in the chair to her right, she glanced at the white rag and saw that it was stained blue, crusted and sticky. "You didn't get your powers like the rest of us, did you?" She shook her head and thumbed the soft fabric. "No. I was used in one of Bertrand's experiments to make his army of ice conduits. Before I passed out from the bloodletting, he said he was going to use a serum designed by a friend of ours to activate powers without spending human lives. Then he laughed and said he was going to make me suffer to make up the difference. Sounds like you've been through worse than this." She didn't respond, caught in the contemplation of whether that statement was true or not. "Put it on your head before it gets cold. I don't know if that stuff clots like normal blood. I still have platelets, I'm fine." She placed the cooling rag on her head and held it with firm pressure. She sat in silence for a few minutes until her hypothermic skin inevitably began to form ice crystals on the wet cloth. As she started to stand and reheat it for herself, Eddie took it from her and repeated for her to lay still. He washed the biological serum out of the fibers, ran under the hot water again and wrung it dry. Then he returned to his chair and gave it back to her. "Don't forget the cuts on your arm." She looked down, hardly noticing the long slices across her forearm from her encounter with the window. She cared for the purplish lacerations before setting it back on her head. He watched her wordlessly, eyes darting to the window periodically. His expression morphed from disappointment to indifference to sorrow with subtle changes to the incline of his brows. It was as if there was a whole lifetime of suffering peering back at him from outside that only he could see. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. "Why can't you just tell me what you're thinking and get it over with? I know you have something to say, so just say it." Eddie moved his gaze from the window to her with a look that seemed almost nihilistic and apathetic. "Because I don't know what to think," he said so quietly that he may as well have whispered it to himself.